After a series of leaks from US electronic component suppliers and reports from engineers involved in closed-door consultations in Santa Clara, the tech market has reached a point that Wall Street is already calling a potential threat to the entire Apple ecosystem. Insiders claim that Nvidia is preparing its first smartphone, the NeoPhone, and within Silicon Valley there is growing talk that this device may strike at the iPhone in a way neither Samsung, Huawei, Xiaomi, nor dozens of other companies ever managed. For the first time in 17 years, a device has emerged that threatens not the external aspects of the smartphone, design, camera, battery, but the very core of Apple's philosophy, controlled architecture, a closed ecosystem, and the principle that top-tier computing should be executed through the company's cloud servers. According to US specialists familiar with the internal architecture of the new project, the NeoPhone is built around a mobile version of the ultra-powerful Rubin or Blackwell X line of chips. Processors optimized not for interface animations or lightweight AI features, but for full-scale autonomous generation, processing and training of large language models directly on the device. This means the NeoPhone may become the first smartphone in the world capable of running GPT-class tasks fully locally with a speed and depth that are currently impossible on the iPhone due to architectural limitations of the A series. For Apple, this hits the weakest point. The company has spent years building a strategy of partially local, partially cloud-based AI, where complex operations are performed on servers. But if Nvidia brings to market a smartphone capable of performing these operations on its own, without contacting the cloud, the user will no longer depend on Apple Intelligence, the closed iCloud ecosystem, server-side processing, or the imposed logic of platform integration. This is why US analysts believe Apple's problem is not that the NeoPhone will have a faster camera or a brighter display. The problem is that the NeoPhone changes the very nature of the smartphone. If the iPhone remains an elegant instrument within a controlled ecosystem, the NeoPhone is built as an autonomous digital intelligence operating 24/7 and capable of learning from the owner's habits, creating contextual behavior models, generating video, synthesizing photos, processing voice commands, analyzing the environment, and doing all this without sending a single data packet to a server. This is a direct challenge not only to Apple's technology, but to its business model, because the company's closed ecosystem depends entirely on user reliance on its services. If the NeoPhone gives people the ability to have a full-fledged AI engine right in their pocket, it will destroy the foundation on which Apple built its monopoly. People will no longer be tied to Apple Photos, Apple Mail, Cloud Search, intelligent suggestions, or built-in recommendations. The NeoPhone will be able to generate, analyze, and deliver results faster, more personally, and more deeply than what Apple's servers do today. In the US, this is already being called a paradigm break, because for the first time, a device competes not with the iPhone as a gadget, but with the very idea that the Apple smartphone is the center of your digital life. The NeoPhone, on the contrary, is positioned as a core that replaces all centers at once. The situation for Apple is worsened by another factor. According to US engineers involved in early negotiations, the NeoPhone is expected to reach the market at a price lower than or comparable to the iPhone. While offering computational capabilities, Apple cannot integrate into mobile architecture without completely changing its technological course. Nvidia can afford an aggressive strategy thanks to the massive profitability of its GPU business. If earlier the threats came from brands trying to copy the iPhone, now the threat comes from a company that is not trying to copy anything. It is creating a different class of device. And this is where the most important part begins, the part that causes concern in Cupertino and excitement in Silicon Valley. According to US analysts, if the NeoPhone takes off, Nvidia will not stop at the smartphone. Inside the corporation, several expansion directions are already being discussed. Mobile workstations, next-generation tablets, hybrid laptops with local AI architecture, portable personal computing modules, and even mixed reality headsets operating fully offline. Apple has spent many years trying to enter these segments, but its devices have always depended on the iPhone, iCloud, and server infrastructure, while Nvidia can build an entire lineup around the idea of autonomous AI in every device. If the NeoPhone succeeds, Nvidia will be able to create its own ecosystem in which the smartphone becomes the core and all other devices its extensions. But not in the Apple style where the ecosystem is a set of dependencies, rather in the style of a computing platform where each device possesses its own independent intelligence. For Apple, this is the worst scenario. The company risks facing not a competitor, but an entirely new architecture in which the iPhone, iPad, MacBook, and Vision Pro stop being the pinnacle of technology and become devices of an older paradigm. US experts note that the tech world is facing for the first time a situation in which a company that controls the infrastructure of global AI, from data centers to autonomous robots, begins forming its own consumer product. This is not another attempt to compete with the iPhone through beauty or convenience. This is an intrusion by a company standing at the top of the computational pyramid into a segment where Apple has been the leader until now. And the main threat is that Nvidia can raise the bar of mobile computing so high that Apple's current flagships become limited by their own closed architecture, which for decades was built around interface and camera optimization rather than large-scale AI operations. US analytical centers are concerned that Nvidia, unlike Apple's other competitors, is not tied to the traditional constraints of the mobile industry. It has no need to maintain supply chains across tens of millions of devices, no heavy dependence on old processor lines, no fear of breaking its own ecosystem. The NeoPhone may become a device created not for gradual evolution, but for a technological leap that Apple simply cannot replicate quickly due to the nature of its architecture and corporate strategy. Moreover, analysts note that Nvidia has for the first time made it clear that it sees the user not as an element of an ecosystem, but as the carrier of a personal computational core. If this shift succeeds, traditional mobile interfaces may lose their meaning, and that directly affects the foundation of the model on which Apple built its profits for decades. In the US, it is already noted that the generation raised on the iPhone is for the first time showing interest not simply in a new smartphone, but in a device that can give them what the Apple ecosystem has never offered: full technological independence. Young audiences are increasingly looking not for a pretty shell or convenient synchronization, but for real computational power and tools capable of creating content, automating tasks, learning in the background, analyzing the owner's life, and saving time. In this sense, NeoPhone becomes not an alternative to the iPhone, but an answer to what users have long wanted and never received: an autonomous AI engine that works as a personal system rather than a feature inside a platform. Many US analysts already say that if Nvidia really brings NeoPhone to the market in the form insiders describe, it may become the moment when Apple, for the first time in 2 decades, shifts into the role of a catching-up player. And if NeoPhone succeeds, Nvidia will gain the ability to deploy its capabilities everywhere computation exists: laptops, tablets, headsets, home AI hubs, autonomous workstations, and then the battle will no longer be for the smartphone market, but for the future of personal computing, where Apple risks losing the position it has held for nearly 20 years.